Welcome, and what a run we have in store for you tonight. What we have here is my first 100-ball run in straight pool. Fortunately, I happened to catch it on camera. Now, all of us have learned a great deal by watching the great players, John Schmidt, Jason Shaw, Thorsten Homan. Go back a few years and you've got Mike Sigel and Steve Miserak. I'd recommend watching every one of them. There's a great deal to learn from players of that caliber. But there's another way to learn this game. Sometimes it's easier to learn from someone who's only a little farther along than you are. The problems he faces are often the very same ones you're facing yourself, and the solutions may be a little easier to recognize. Now, let's have a look at the run. This run took place on July 3rd, 2026, at my home during a friendly race to 100 in straight pool. The table is a Brunswick Gold Crown 5 Tournament Edition with 4.5-inch pockets, Semanius 860 cloth, and the classic Brunswick Centennial balls, which I happen to think are the finest looking pool balls ever made. I need to get rid of the 5 to open the lanes for the 2 and 3, and I'd like to get rid of the 1 as soon as possible. Here I couldn't quite decide on the safest way to get from the 5 to the 1, and I ended up running into the 1 and leaving myself a long shot on the 14. In hindsight, removing the 11 first and getting on the 1 from the 3 would have been the safer and better choice. Running high numbers in straight pool is all about playing the percentages in your favor. The goal should be to run 5 or 6 racks without facing a single difficult shot. If you have to come up with hero shots too often, the percentages eventually catch up with you and bring your run to an end. That means keeping the cue ball in the open, controlling it after the break shot, and having a simple, high percentage route to land perfectly on your break ball. I got a little fortunate landing straight in on the 14 and was able to continue the run, but I don't believe I solved the problem in this first rack in the highest percentage way. For all you aspiring straight pool players out there, I'd recommend setting this position up, marking the balls with clear reinforcement rings, and trying the different solutions. Practice them until you can execute them with confidence and develop a better understanding of the risks and pitfalls of each approach. The 2 and the 3 both work as break balls, and even though every ball has a pocket, I'd still consider the 2, 3, the 1, 8, and the 11 to be small problems. I just don't like balls lying close together because it means I need the right angle to avoid running into another ball. The 11 is a little too low on the table and can be difficult to reach from many areas, so I need to get just the right angle on it to play comfortably from there. Now I fell nicely on the 1, and if I managed to get from 1 to the 8, I solved all the problems and have a nice path laid out to my break ball. 8, 7, 9, 4, 2. Even so, execution and precision still matter a great deal, especially when you are playing on tough equipment. As you can see, I rattled the 7 and ended up a little too flat on the 9. But I managed to get back in line on the 4 as my key ball to fall perfectly on my break ball. I would prefer the break ball to be a little closer to the rack, but aside from that, this is about as good a break ball as you can ask for. Jason Shaw ran multiple 500-plus runs, along with 2 world records, using almost exclusively this type of break shot. You play this one with a high ball, no side English, and you don't have to worry about losing the cue ball. The break ball is the most important shot in straight pool, as is the case for probably all the pool disciplines. So make sure to take this one as seriously as possible. Take your time to check the angle, practice, and trust your fundamentals, and follow through with authority. I've got a nice spread of the balls, several available shots, and a loose cue ball. So the first thing I want to do after the break is identify the problems and find a way to address them as early as possible while minimizing the risk of getting the cue ball tied up or ending up without a shot. The 110 and the cluster around the rack area are my biggest concerns, and I'd prefer to address the problems outside the rack area first. I made sure to draw into the upper half of the 1. As you can see, I was very pleased with the result of the breakout. You don't need to play position when you already have it. The 10 frees up lanes and is a nice ball to go into the cluster around the rack area with the 9 and the 13 acting as insurance balls. I made sure to hit the cluster between the 7 and the 10 rather than catching the right side of the 14. Now I can use the 1 to go into the 7-14 cluster with the 13 and the 11 serving as my insurance balls. Now every ball has a pocket, and the 6 is my break ball. I'm a little tree-topped on the 13, so I lose a little accuracy. I'd like to get on the 3, but my main objective is simply to get into the middle of the balls where I'll have plenty of options and can cue the ball comfortably. With the balls this wide open, there are countless ways to run them. My approach is to deal with the problems in order of importance, from biggest to smallest. The more options I have for a particular ball, the later in the run I can afford to deal with it. Here I got a little short on the 15, and it probably wasn't the safest pattern from the 11. Stunning the cue ball to the other side with position on the 4 in the side pocket, with the 3, the 15, and the 12 acting as insurance balls would probably have been the better choice. But since I'd already taken care of all the major problems, I still had plenty of options to get back in line. 12, 3, 15, 4, 5, 6. A nice angle on the key ball lets me fall perfectly on the break ball. Once again, this is about as good a break ball as you can ask for. It's the type of break ball Jason Shaw used almost exclusively during his world record runs. Jason even seemed to prefer a little more angle on this type of break ball. But there's a reason they call him Eagle Eye, and he set those records on 5-inch pockets. It looks like I ended up with either the 14 to the upper left pocket or a difficult cut on the 5 to the side pocket. I felt the cut was missable and didn't offer as much cue ball control. The 12-1 is also a major problem, and by playing the 14 first, I can address it immediately. I have the 8 to the side as insurance, and playing pocket speed opens up the pocket. So trust your fundamentals and just cinch the ball. The cut on the 1 wasn't easy, and I was happy to split the pocket with this one. With the easy 13-5 combination to the lower left pocket, I figured I'd have several options afterward, so I let the cue ball run toward the cluster in the rack area, hoping to open a few balls and perhaps even create a nice break ball. I rushed this one a little, not checking the angles carefully and making sure where I wanted the cue ball to end up after making the 11. This is a crucial stage of the rack since I don't have a good break ball yet and I'm starting to run out of options to create one. Cutting the 2 and splitting the 7-9 cluster with the cue ball would probably have moved the 9 into a perfect break ball position. Now I need 3 more balls before I can get back to the 2 and try to manufacture a break ball with the 7. With 6 balls left on the table, ideally you should have taken care of all the problems and have an easy pattern to fall perfectly on your break ball. As you can see, the end pattern here didn't look effortless at all. The 7 is a little high for a break ball, but as the great philosopher Mick Jagger once said, you can't always get what you want. Just take what the table gives you, leave yourself an angle toward the rail on the 12. Coming into the rail gives you much better speed control and makes it easier to get the perfect angle on your brake ball. As always on the brake ball, make sure to check the angle, take your time, trust your fundamentals, and split the pocket. There's no faster way to lose a straight pool match than by missing your brake shots. I play this brake ball with follow and a touch of inside English, right English in this case. It helps keep the cue ball in the middle of the table and avoids the scratch in the side pocket. I got a nice spread of the balls, the cue ball loose and in the middle of the table, and still only one available shot. The 12 to the left side of the pocket. The 10 is even blocking a small portion of the pocket. The first shot after the break will often be the one that ends your run, since you have the least control over it. But after making the 12, I'm back in line to run the next rack. The 10 gets me on the 4 as my secondary brake ball, while keeping the 1 as my insurance ball. Make sure to visualize the exact path of the cue ball, the exact position where you'll hit the cluster, and how the balls will react. You won't always be right at first, but you'll develop a much better understanding of how to go into clusters if you make your predictions beforehand and compare them with the actual results as immediate feedback. Recording your runs and watching them back is also immensely helpful. You can study the reaction of the balls over and over again, even in slow motion, until you understand exactly how they react. Here, a thinner glance off the 2 would probably have produced a much better result, but I didn't take the time to properly study the cluster and decide where I wanted to hit it. I got rid of the 5, but pushed another ball through the rail. Small mistakes have a tendency to accumulate in straight pool, and this is a perfect example of that. And now I have 3 balls close to the right rail, blocking each other and creating a real problem for my run. As mentioned before, try to get rid of your problems as soon as possible. That's the reason for playing the 14 and trying to get position on the 11 right away. I fell on the 11, but I didn't quite feel comfortable slow rolling it to keep position on the 1, and I didn't have a good insurance ball to go into the 2 or the 13. Looking back, I think it was a mistake not to take care of the 11 here. It's a good example of weighing the risks and rewards of taking what the table gives you without trying to force position that isn't there and taking slightly more difficult shots earlier in the rack to make your life easier later on. It seems I had resigned myself to using the 3 in the side pocket as my brake ball and just trying to clear the remaining balls without getting into trouble. As you can see, I'm playing position on multiple balls whenever possible. Now the 6 gets me nicely on the 8, which is still blocking the path to the pocket for the 15. I ended up a little tree-topped over the 3, and since I couldn't avoid hitting the 13, I used it to get position on the 15. I got a little lucky, moving the 13 into a perfect, though unorthodox, brake ball position. I can now use the 3 as my key ball to stop anywhere near the middle of the table. Low left English on the brake ball will open the balls nicely, while the cue ball will glance off the rack to the right rail, and the left English will bring it nicely off the rail and back to the middle of the table. The cue ball got kissed by the 15, so it stayed a little low. But I have the cue ball loose and multiple balls to choose from. The cluster in the middle is the obvious problem, but all the balls have a pocket. The 14 goes after I remove the 6. The 10, 12, 3, and 5 all go to the bottom right pocket once the 14 is removed. A less obvious problem is the 9 and the 15 just below the right side pocket. There's definitely an argument for shooting the 9 first to open the bottom pocket for the 11 and get rid of a problem ball. I chose the easier 4 in the side pocket instead, and that haunted me a little later in the run. I got about as good a shot on the 9 in the bottom right pocket as one could wish for, and I still didn't like it. I hate rolling the cue ball over such a long distance, and I didn't have a comfortable insurance ball after the 9. I used the 2 to fall on the 6 and draw off the 5 for the 11 in the side pocket. Old-timers like Danny DiLiberto would preach in every commentary, "Thou shalt not run into other balls when every ball has a pocket." But I don't think that's actually the right advice. I'd say Jason Shaw proved Danny wrong by running over 504 times, including 2 world records, while running into other balls all the time. That said, you should know what happens when you run into other balls, and you should always have an insurance ball. And you should always have a good reason for running into another ball. Getting straight on the 9 and getting rid of the 9 and the 15 before taking care of the 14 would probably have been the better choice. I guess I wasn't quite aware of how big a problem those 2 balls by the side pocket were. My plan was to open up the cluster, create multiple potential break balls to choose from, and have the 1 as my insurance ball. I wasn't aware that bridging over the 5 would make the 1 very missable. I got lucky to have the 5 available in the left side pocket. I decided to get rid of the 7 first. I wanted to get a little closer and have a better angle on the 10 so I could better judge where the cue ball would hit the 8 coming off the 10. Here I want to err on the side of hitting the cue ball a little too hard rather than too soft. I want to make sure I don't get stuck on the bottom rail and that the 8 doesn't block the pocket for the 1. Now the layout pretty much dictates how to play the rest of the rack. I'll play position on the 3 to the same pocket as the 1, then the 8, the 9, and the 15, hopefully falling nicely on the 12 as my break ball. That's a very tough end pattern for straight pool, more typical of a 9-ball runout. There's no margin for error, and the slightest positional mistake might be the end of the run. And even though I managed to get on the balls about as well as one could ask for, I still ended up with a much worse break ball than I would have liked. All because I didn't take care of my problem balls by the side pocket early enough. But there's no reason to dwell on past mistakes. As always, check your angle, trust your fundamentals, stay down, split the pocket with the break ball, stroke the ball with authority, and hope the pool gods leave you something workable after the break. I ended up with a very thin cut on the 3 as my only option. My plan is to hit the upper half of the 1 and hopefully end up with a shot after the breakout. Keep in mind that all these problems go back to not taking care of those problem balls by the side pocket early enough in the last rack. I wasn't even sure the 11 was makeable from where it came to rest, but with no other choice, I loaded up the cue ball with left English to help throw the 11 to the right and just hope for a shot afterwards. Now, finally, I got back in line. I wanted to have the 14 straight into the side pocket since the 10, the 7, and the 9 all go from the middle of the table. I was a little mad at myself for overdrawing the cue ball after making it through all the tough balls. So I just made sure to pocket the 14 in the side and hope to end up with a shot. I didn't end up with a lot of options, but the balls seemed to connect nicely. The pattern was the 5, the 8 in the side, and then a slight angle on the 9 to go into the 4-15 cluster. I managed to fall perfectly on each one. The 2 and 13 are close together, but there's no need to go into those 2 since they each have a pocket. Since the 10 by the left corner pocket is a very workable break ball, I wanted to leave it for now and play position on the 4 into the same pocket as the 1. I don't like leaving the 13 as the key ball. It's too close to the 2, leaving very little room for error. So my ideal pattern would be the 13, the 10, the 15, and then rolling one rail from the 15 for position on the 2 as my break ball. But I ended up with the wrong angle on the 13 and was left with a very tough shot to get position on the break ball from the 10. You need to play the 10 to the right side of the pocket and judge just the right amount of stun on this one. So this shot probably looked a lot easier than it actually was. I was happy to get it over with and end up with a manageable angle on the 2. A nice follow stroke with a touch of left English should open the balls nicely on this break ball and keep the cue ball from getting anywhere near the side pockets. This was my first ever run over 80 balls with the cue ball free in the middle of the table and a very manageable layout. I definitely started to feel the pressure of getting close to my first ever 100-ball run and took a quick bathroom break. I'm pretty sure I had a clear shot on the 8, and I don't know what outcome I was expecting from shooting the 9. I guess the adrenaline of getting close to my first 100-ball run clouded my judgment. This long 5 from the rail on 4.5-inch pockets is probably about as tough as a shot can get. I was definitely happy to have gotten this one over with. My plan was to get on the 8 and the 11 to open up the lanes for the 14, the 15, and the 4. I came up short and didn't feel comfortable playing the 12. I felt better shooting the 14-8 combination with the 11 as my insurance ball. Tough layout. Normally you can play position on multiple balls in straight pool, but here I had to make up my mind whether I wanted to get straight in on the 15 and play the 14 afterwards, or get straight in on the 12 to fall down on the 7. I managed to fall nicely on the 7 with the right angle to draw in between these 2 rows of balls and have the 14 next. Here my plan was to draw for the 13 or the 6. I ended up way short and had to come up with a tough shot to get back in line. Now there's a very nice end pattern, the 4, the 3, the 10, the 6, and the 13 as the break ball. There is hardly any cue ball movement, and according to the old-timers, this is exactly what the end pattern in straight pool should look like. Even, or especially, with such a connect-the-dots end pattern, make sure to check the angles and fall exactly right for the next ball. Always check the tangent line of the break ball to make sure where the cue ball will hit the rack. On this break ball, a stun shot will send a cue ball toward the corner pocket. I put maximum draw on the cue ball and take a little off the force of the break shot so the draw can grab earlier and make sure I avoid a scratch. Here I felt like the 4, the ball closest to the left rail, was my best secondary break ball. My plan was to play the 2, then the 12, and fall nicely on the 4 just above the 8 ball. I made sure to slightly overrun my ideal position rather than get stuck behind the 8. I missed the 5 completely and ended up with a tough, long shot on the 7. I felt more comfortable playing the 11, trying to get nicely on the 3. I missed my mark, tried to get there from the 8, came up short again, tried one last time to get a better angle on the 3 from the 9, and ended up missing the 3, ending my run. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video helpful, and I hope it helps you run your personal best in straight pool. See you at the tables.